Wings of Legacy, 375 years of faith and service in a bird's eye view. The Holy Trinity's love for the world overflows outward in mission in human history. The 17th century world faced the rise of modernism, reshaping the art, science, and politics. In southern France, in the deeply Catholic town of Lepi, a young Jesuit named Father Jean-Pierre Médaille felt guided by the quiet voice of the Holy Spirit. He imagined a new way to live the gospel, one that focused on being simple, united, and caring deeply for others. During his missionary journeys, Father Médaille encountered two distinct yet deeply moving realities. On the one hand, he met the suffering widows, orphans, and the destitute yearning for compassion and relief. On the other hand, he saw women filled with spiritual fervor, longing to serve God and uplift the needy. But they were not allowed to live as a religious outside the monastic walls. Therefore, in 1646, Father Médaille boldly formed a group of women eager to serve God in a secret association, called it the Little Design, free of cloister, religious habit, rank, privilege, or status. 4 years later, through the support of Bishop Henry de Maupas, the Bishop of Lepi, Médaille's secret association, called Little Design, was formally established as the Congregation of the Sisters of St. Joseph on October 15, 1650. Dressed as the widows of that time, this apostolic way of life was sustained by prayer and loving service. Each SSJ community became a small sanctuary of double and total union as its founder intended. The Sisters of St. Joseph expanded across France as each new foundation adapted itself to the needs of the local people, faithful to the spirit of their founder, who set no limit but to embrace every form of compassionate service. As the days turned into decades and decades into generations, 140 years quietly rolled on till the French Revolution in 1789.
As the winds of the French Revolution began to rise, the congregation was outlawed. The sisters, accused of opposing revolutionary ideals, were labeled enemies of the state, and their services were forcibly suppressed. In 1794, as Robespierre's reign of terror gripped France, numerous sisters were arrested and imprisoned. Among them, 5 sisters were beheaded at the guillotine. Today, a resilient tree stands on that very ground as a living monument of renewal and hope. At the death of Robespierre in 1794, a few sisters emerged alive from the prisons, only to discover their convents destroyed and their possessions confiscated, and no place was left for them. Therefore, the sisters sought refuge in their paternal houses. Among them, the most notable was St. John Fonbonne, remembered with particular reverence. The congregation that had served faithfully for 140 years ceased to exist in any visible form, silent yet not extinguished. After obscurity to rebirth through Mother St. John Fonbonne. After 13 years, St. John Fonbonne was called to Lyons by Cardinal Joseph Fesch, the uncle of Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte. Cardinal Fesch requested St. John Fonbonne to guide 12 women in Lyons who were dressed in black, called as Black Daughters, who aspired to embrace religious life. Accepting the call, Fonbonne met the women and humbly assumed the role as their new superior. On July 14, 1808, this devoted group was officially recognized as the Congregation of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Lyons. Under the visionary leadership of Mother St. John Fonbonne, the congregation flourished once more across France, proudly bearing the name Sisters of St. Joseph of Lyons. As the number of convents grew into the hundreds, bishops across France requested Mother St. John Fonbonne to establish independent congregations within their dioceses. In response, the congregations such as the Sisters of St. Joseph of Chambéry and Pinerol, St. Joseph of Annecy, etc., emerged, eventually forming a total number of 49 distinct and autonomous congregations. Soon, these congregations spread across the globe.
The area of Savoy in France had 4 communities in Thoran, Evian, Chalanchet and Megève, which were under the Diocese of Annecy. The then Bishop of Annecy, Monseigneur Joseph Ray, wanted it as a separate congregation in his diocese. Borrowing sisters from St. Joseph of Chambéry and Pignerol, with the consent of Mother St. John Fonbonne, on May 7, 1833, the Congregation of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Annecy was born, with Mother Fortuny Mene as their first Superior General. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. The Sisters of St. Joseph of Annecy expanded their presence to neighboring towns and villages, broadening their mission of mercy. They devoted themselves caring for orphans, educating children, and tending to the sick with compassion and dedication, called to distant mission. Reverend Sebastian Theophile Nere, Vizag's first Catholic Vicar General from the missionaries of St. Francis de Sales, recognized the need for a community of sisters to serve girls and women in Visakhapatnam. He reached out to Mother Aloysius in Annecy, France, sharing the opportunities for meaningful service in Vizag. The sisters set forth from Annecy in the year 1849 by ship and reached Yanam, from there by bullock cart to Visakhapatnam, and were accommodated at St. Anne's Cathedral. From there, the sisters began to tend to children and orphans and education of girls. As the local vocations increased, they constructed convents in Kakinada, Palakonda, Cuttack, Fort, and Voltaire. The congregational mission continues today through a wide range of compassionate services in educating young minds in schools and colleges, providing healing ministry in hospitals and dispensaries, offering dedicated care to the elderly, empowering women through meaningful initiatives, standing in solidarity with the marginalized and oppressed, and engaging themselves in catechetical work and social services. The congregation journeyed from India to England and Ireland, guided by the efforts of Captain Charles Duell of Malmesbury. In 1861, he returned to England accompanied by missionary priest Father Francois Larive, offering his home as a residence for the sisters. The Sisters of St. Joseph of Annecy spread to Switzerland, Algeria, Senegal, Tanzania, Congo, and Kenya.
In gratitude to God for 375 years of grace, through special prayers and a novena re-emphasizing and reflecting on the congregational charism, planted 375 fruit trees and potted plants across communities and institutions. Seed balls scattered statewide to nourish a lasting sign of care for creation and achieved a world record. Each community fed 375 or more poor people, visited many families and initiated little design groups. Students celebrated the occasion with joyful flash mobs. Every act of love reflected the charism of double and total union through faith lived in love and love shown in service. Reaffirmed the commitment, wherever there is a need, there let us be.
From age to age we proclaim, His mercy endures forever. May the Holy Trinity, ever creative, ever loving, ever self-giving, continue to guide each sister of Saint Joseph gently and faithfully in the quiet footsteps of Saint Joseph, whose humble strength and silent service inspire our journey of grace in coming years.
With grateful hearts, we sing to you, O Lord, for 375 years of grace outpoured. We bless your name for Medaios' holy dream, a path of love that still through us is seen. You called us, Lord, through silence and through prayer, to be your hands of mercy everywhere. Through Father Madai, your vision took its place, to serve the poor, to live in truth and peace. O Eucharistic Lord, our strength each day. In bread and wine, you guide our sacred way. In every mission, classroom, home, and street, your living presence makes our joy complete. 300